Hi, I am Renae Elliott from Elliott's PT, and I've been a trainer for over 12 years. My real passion is helping women become the best version of themselves. I want them to feel empowered so then they can understand their body, how it works, and be strong enough to do everything that they want to in life. Something that I'm really passionate about is helping women rebuild their core strength after they've had babies. Now, one thing I want to get through to you first of all is, regardless of how old your children are and maybe how long ago you had your kids, you can still rebuild that core strength. So why is this a big passion for me? Because after having my own babies and training thousands and thousands of women over the years, I seem to see lots of common links between people, not being able to be active or to do things, or being restricted in things in their life because of how their core was after they had given birth. And I've seen women with older kids, kids in their 20s, 30s, still not be able to do something for years because they were having trouble with their pelvic floor, or do things because they have back pain. And I just don't want this. I just don't want this for you. It is all things that can be prevented. And if we really start to have an awareness of our body and some things I'm going to show you in today's workshop, you can really start to rebuild your core strength. Your journey after birth is really unique to you. There is no right or wrong thing you should or you shouldn't be all doing, but rebuilding your core strength is really fundamental in healing after. For me personally, I have two children. There is a 4 years difference between them. And I came, when I had my first baby, I was able to work back, rebuild a lot of my core strength. That I had things with my first baby, like I had back pain and these things, and I didn't quite understand enough about my pelvic floor and all of that. But by the time I got to my second, I had spent all this time studying it and understanding it a lot more, and I trained women differently. I can't believe the changes that I made between my second and my first. Can't believe the changes that I made and how different my core was, and I didn't have back pain or any of those things. My story is, after I'd had my second baby, I couldn't walk. I couldn't even walk down my street. I tore. I had a second degree tear, and it took them longer to stitch me up than what the actual birth did. And it was traumatic in itself. But when I first came out of hospital, I couldn't walk to the end of my street, and being a trainer, being fit, I exercised all my way through pregnancy, exercised right up until the day I gave birth. My exercise changed as my pregnancy progressed. And because of things that I'd learned from my first baby, by the time I got to my second baby, there's this stretch that I did, and it saved my hips. Where, when I was having my son, I was pregnant with him, I remember this point of feeling like my hips were being torn apart, because they were that tight. So I was able to stay on top of a lot of things during my second pregnancy. After the birth, like the first few days, I could not walk down the street, and then, there was things, I knew I couldn't do any of the things that I could before, but I was lucky enough that I knew that it would take time. I remember after a certain amount of time, I was desperate to run again. I really enjoyed running, and running was something that I found really, I did it after my son. So I couldn't wait to get back to running. This got to the point that it had been long enough, and I'd felt that I was stronger, and I had been working my core, and I started running, and I ran, and I wet myself. And I thought, I just had some water before I ran. Maybe that was just a once off. And I did it, a couple of days later. I thought I'll try again, and the same thing happened. I completely wet myself, and I knew that I would have to do something about it. I knew that this could not be ignored, and nor was I going to, because I've seen so many women ignore these things, and they just put up with it, or they don't do any activities that would aggravate it. But that doesn't have to be the case. You can change this, and this doesn't have to be the way. So that was how I felt. That was how I felt with that. after my birth. I also remember we went away. So my daughter was still young, and we went away. And even though I understand it takes time to rebuild your core strength and all of this, I still didn't enjoy how I felt. Okay, I remember we went away this weekend and we were visiting friends. And yes, I had a little baby in my arms, but nothing fitted me. None of my clothes fitted me. I felt really uncomfortable. I felt uncomfortable sitting down. I felt, because my jeans hung off me, like they were too tight, so they didn't, I felt uncomfortable sitting down. But I didn't want to buy any new jeans because, I knew that this wasn't going to last forever. And I remember everything, just nothing fitted right. And I just felt horrible. I remember feeling, I had, my tummy was still, like I had this tummy pooch, that was hanging out, and I just felt uncomfortable. And I couldn't wait to just go back inside or to come back home and not be out in public. And I just really did feel like hiding. And, I shouldn't do, but I did. I looked at other women and thought, I remember around the same time that I had Khloe Kardashian had her baby, and obviously she was all over social media, and she was, and I know all of this stuff, she was trim and back to this however quickly after, and I know because I've trained so many women, I know it all, but I still judge myself. I still put myself down, I still judge myself, and I had to really give myself a good talking to, because I know that all of that thing on social media is unrealistic and it's not true, and it's probably photoshopped or any of those things. And but I still let those things make me. I still felt bad about myself when I saw them. And your journey after birth is unique to you, and it really is unique to you. The positive thing that I had is, even though I had these moments of when I felt really down and, I felt uncomfortable when nothing fitted me, and and all of that, I knew how to change it. And I knew that I had to do the work and put the work in to change it. There's the rational part of me was saying, stop looking at that because that's unrealistic. And that's not your journey. I knew all of these things. And I had to talk to myself, give myself a good talking to, in order to pull myself together. But I see so many mums that don't have the knowledge that I have, feel that it's unobtainable and that it's not for them, or that it's something that they have to work out for hours on end in order to get that result. And it's just not true. While I was pregnant, I remember a doctor once describing to me as birth like a rugby match for your vagina. And he was saying that it's like this big rugby match, and what happens when someone gets injured, when playing, if they injure their knee or something when playing rugby, they fix it. They have to do the rehab. They have to spend the time to fix that knee, and to do the rehab, to build the strength up, to make sure that they can to be stronger for when they play again. But what happens with women after birth? We get thrown into looking after your children. You get thrown into becoming a mom, especially if it's your first time baby. It's so overwhelming, all the things that you're thrown at. If it's your second, or third or fourth, you've got all these other kids to look after as well. So where do you become on the pecking order? You've just got to survive. And, that's what I see with women all the time is, they don't put the care into themselves. The care during the pregnancy is all about you. But then when the baby's born, it becomes about the baby. And I feel the mum's really forgotten. And I'm here to tell you that you're important, and I'm not going to let you be forgotten. I'm going to be here to support you and to help you rebuild your core strength. And we are going to do some of the things today in this workshop. And there is also a program that you can have to help guide you through all these things as well. So, out of all of these things, I see, mums are exhausted. They're exhausted. We know that it's beneficial to exercise. We know it's important, but it just feels like it's impossible. It just feels like there's not enough time in the day to fit these things in. And that is not possible, let alone finding time, finding energy. How can you find the energy to do so, or to even fit it in? The first thing I want you to think about, and if you can grab a pen and paper, please do. I want you to think about, what is your why? So this why is one of the most, the real internal motivators that you're going to have. And this is the thing that's going to help get you through anything when you are, anything you want. It's going to help get you through when the times get tough, you know, and it is something that I remind myself of constantly. So my why for life is that I want to lead the best quality life possible. I want to be the 90-year-old that is still running down the streets, that is still lifting weights, that is still being active with my children or my grandchildren. That is what I want to be. I don't want to be the 90-year-old that can't move, that can't get up and down and do things. That is my why, and that is why I exercise. That is why I prioritize, you know, strengthening my core and rebuilding it after pregnancy. That's why I took the time to make sure that I did that and I got those things right first. I didn't waste any time. So I want you to think about and write down, what is your why? What is your why in life? What do you want to achieve? What do you want to be? It's all different. There is no right or wrong, but what's the thing that's really, really important to you? Some other whys I hear is, you know, being there for the kids. Lots of mums want to be able to do things with their kids. They want to do the activities. I also always say, I want to lift my children up. I want to be able to lift them up. No matter how old they get, I want to be strong enough that I can pick them up. So think about that why, because that why is the thing that's going to keep us going, or to remind you of why you're doing this. And when we think about this why, are you currently, the next kind of question to ask yourself is, if you have that why down, now I expect you to pause this and come back to me. If you've written down that why, I want you to think about, are you currently living your life to that why? If you your thing is about, like me, strong and aging and all of those things, but you have back pain and, you know, are you doing anything about it? If you're not doing anything about it, then maybe there's something that you need to be thinking about. How can I start doing something to be living more aligned with what my why is? I remember going back to having, my children are, 5 and 9 now. So, but I remember with, my firstborn, I had him, and you would be, in these periods of time of holding him, and I wouldn't want to move because I didn't want to wake him up, and all of being too scared to do this. I'm in this position. Oh, he's finally asleep. Okay, I'll just stay here and this will be fine. And that would end up with back pain and neck pain, and it'd be stiff and sore and all of these things. But I'll just have to get through it, and that's all fine. But by the time I got to my second, I applied different things, and I never had any of that back pain, things that I'm going to share with you later on. So, I learnt different strategies between number 1 and number 2, on how, and I apply in all of my classes now, on how to make sure that we are preventing this pain, and that we want to work from prevention rather than cure. So, as much as I, between my first and my second, I wish that I understood, first thing I wish I understood is, while you are breastfeeding, you are going to hold on to weight, okay? And it is our body's way of survival. So they are going to, and with another thing that I, met so many people, and they said to me, oh, breastfeed and you'll lose weight and all of those other things. And when I breastfeeding, I didn't lose weight. And yes, not that everything's about weight, and I know all of that, but I wanted to feel good about myself. I remember being so shocked after having my firstborn and looking down at my stomach and thinking, oh my God, is that what's happened? Because I didn't, it takes time for your stomach to come down and all of those things. And I didn't realize or understanding that. I just remember looking down at my stomach and being like, oh my God, what's happened to my body? But it's, I wish I understood that your body, will hold on to weight while you're breastfeeding, because if we've got extra fat on us, if we're in a famine, we can, we can still breastfeed, which is important for your babies. I wish I understood that with my first. I understood it with my second. I didn't with my first, and I wondered why I wasn't like everyone else who would say that you'll lose lots of weight, and it didn't happen for me. But what I did do is I made sure I got the foundations right. So I got my food right. I started working on my core. I strengthened my transverse abdominals first. I spent my time doing this. So when my hormones were aligned back up, and when I stopped breastfeeding, I already had these great foundations, and everything fell into place so much easier because I had done the groundwork first. It might not have been as quick as somebody else, but I still had that groundwork. And because I did that groundwork, I'm stronger than ever. So some statistics that I'm going to share with you. So 85% of women will have a baby in their lifetime. And lots of women still suffer because there is lack of knowledge as to how to keep them safe, healthy, and strong during and after pregnancy. And these are things that I've met lots of women that have come to me and trained, and I'm horrified at the things I've heard them doing. I've heard, women after exercise, after birth, pretty soon after birth, jumping around, trying to do the same things that they did before their babies without getting these foundations right first. I've had women come and tell me, which just makes me want to cry, is that they've trained with people and they find that they're wetting themselves, and the trainers have told them just to wear pads. That is not okay. It is not okay to leak. It is not something that should be laughed at or accepted, that you have a baby, that because you've had a baby you leak. These are all things that can be changed. I wet myself when I first started running. I knew that it was not okay. I knew I had to rebuild my pelvic floor. I had to strengthen and get that connection between my pelvic floor and my transverse abdominals first. I knew I had to do all of that stuff before I could start running again. And yep, was I annoyed? Yes. Was I frustrated? Yes. But I knew it had to happen. And now, 5 years on, I have no problem with my pelvic floor, but I did the work and I don't have problems. And I've trained mums, I've had mums do the courses that their kids are adults and they've been wetting themselves for 20 odd years. And I don't want that for you. It does not have to be that way. Okay, some other statistics is some studies have shown that 45% of women have urinary incontinence 5 to 7 years post-birth. And most women don't say anything to anybody because they're either embarrassed or they just think it's something you have to accept. So say something, and say something to your trainer if you are training with somebody. Up to 19% of women will have surgery for incontinence or pelvic organ prolapse by the age of 85, and 30% of them have to have multiple surgeries. And the thing is that all of this stuff can be prevented the sooner that you get onto it. That if we don't ignore it, if you get onto it sooner, you can prevent a lot of this problem. And the bad news is that there is lots of coaches out there that have lack of knowledge, and and because they have the lack of knowledge, they can make these things worse for you. But the good thing is all these conditions can be successfully treated. You can train safely with a pelvic health physio, that's where I went to, and with a trainer that is certified, in postpartum exercise, they're certified in that, and it means that you can lead a good quality life. It means that you don't have to be restricted from doing the things you want to do. It means you don't have to let run down the street and wet yourself, or not run down the street because you won't even attempt doing it. It means that you don't have to accept that you have back pain, or accept that you have a bulge in your tummy, and we can rebuild that. We can bring that stuff back together. It doesn't have to be something that you accept. It doesn't have to be something that you just have to live with. It can all be changed regardless of how long ago you had your kids. There is also some more statistics, is 1.3 million C-sections are performed in the US alone each year. And most mothers, they're taught very little about how to care for their bodies or the incision site after birth. And a lot of them are just left to go on their own. I know what my journey was like, Nobody talked to me. Nobody checked my tummy for an abdominal separation. Nobody checked, even though I second degree tear or third degree tear, that nobody, I had to ask for it to be checked. Nobody followed up on when I was wetting myself, because I chased it all up. I know that was my journey, but I was lucky enough that I had the knowledge to know that it's not okay, and I knew that it could be changed. And that's what I want to get out to all of you guys. It is not acceptable, and don't live this way, because you can change it and you can have a better quality life. I had a lady that, she had for over 30 years painful sex after she'd had her children, and it was just something that she thought that was accepted, and it ended up that she just needed to go to, her pelvic floor was too tight, and she needed to go to a pelvic health physio and work on releasing it, and it changed her whole life for her. But she put up with it for 30 years. So please don't put up with these things. It's things that shouldn't be embarrassed about. They should be addressed, and more care should be made for us women who are doing all the work that we do in bringing up our beautiful babies. So there is a fact, that 6 to 18% of women still have chronic scar pain, after having a C-section. And, it can make different daily activities, performing those daily activities, painful. And again, this is not, you deserve better. It is not something to be accepted. What we're told is, you can just return back to exercise after 6 weeks. And they're taught very little about their bodies, and there's no other questions asked, and it is really important to look at how is your body functioning, how do you feel, how is your abdominal separation, all of those things. Get these things right. Don't just accept, it's been 6 weeks, I can just return back to exercise, because you know what, it takes longer than 6 weeks to heal. And you cannot return back to doing exactly what you were doing before. You will get there one day, but let's get these foundations and build these foundations right. It took 9 months for your baby to grow. It's going to take that, at least that amount of time to really rebuild that strength. And what I say to all my mamas out there who have gone through my programs is, you can become stronger than you were before, because you've been, we've put this real focus on really rebuilding this core strength. So, and I want women to feel that they are not alone. 35 to 67% of women leak during pregnancy. 45% of women, they experience some leakage post-birth, but even when their kids are 5 to 7 years on. Mostly 95% of women don't mention their incontinence to their trainer or their healthcare provider, and 100% of women have diastasis recti by the time that you're in your third trimester of pregnancy. So as much as exercise does benefit you during pregnancy, your workouts need to be altered to suit where you're at, and same for post-pregnancy. It is not something that you can just jump back into where you were before. Our recovery after having children has nothing to do with just getting your body back into shape. So many mums in our community tell us that they feel pressured to return back to exercise so quickly after that postpartum period, and mainly because they feel pressured to get their body back. And we understand the pressure and the desire to change your body, and whatever women want to do with their own bodies is their own business. But it is really crucial for every new mum or any mum to understand that there are so many benefits of doing postpartum exercises that has nothing to do with changing your body shape. So here is just 6 of them. It improves your mood and well-being. It improves your body image and self-efficiency. It improves your blood circulation, which is really important for healing tissues. Improve your metabolic health, your glucose tolerance, your lipid profiles, and your vascular function. It improves your bone mineral density, and it can prevent lactation-associated bone loss in breastfeeding mums. And it reminds you that you are worthy of your own self-care. And as much as we all know the benefits and why it is so important to exercise postpartum, it can be really, really overwhelming and we don't know where to start. I understand how overwhelming it can feel, and it just feels too hard, and that there is no possibility of fitting this all in, especially when you have a new baby to look after, and even if you have other kids as well. But let me tell you, I was able to manage it. I did it, and I am so grateful that I did. That little bit of exercise that I did daily was that little bit of me time. And I have so many mums that come to me and they say, I wish I started sooner. I wish I did it sooner. I wish I stopped putting it off for so long. I made exercise fit into my lifestyle. I made it work around my kids, my other commitments. I was running my own business, and I had a whole household to run, children, husband, all those other things to manage as well. The thing that I was lucky, I knew where to start. I knew where to start. I knew it had to be achievable and fit in with the lifestyle that I had. And I knew it wouldn't be perfect, because it didn't have to be. I just had to move in some way. And it was never going to be perfect because my life wasn't perfect. Every day was unpredictable. But I made sure that I did something. I made sure I had some form of movement, and really focusing on strengthening my core every day. This is the journey that I was on, and this is what worked for me. I would do something before my baby woke up in the morning. So I would set my alarm before I knew she was going to wake up. I was lucky I could kind of work that out. Yes, it was early, and I would make sure that I did something in the morning. I felt that if I got something done in the morning, that if that's what I got done, I would get that done, but I committed to that. And I made a commitment to myself that when I put my kids in bed, the first thing I would do was some form of core strengthening exercises. And whether I did 5 minutes or 20 minutes, it would depend on how I felt that day. But I made sure I did something. And I did something every night in front of the TV until I felt strong enough and I knew I didn't need to do it anymore. And let me tell you, that took way over 6 months of committing to that. Something in the morning and something every night. It wasn't perfect, it never was, but I made sure that I did something because I knew how important it was to really rebuild this core strength and get this strong and get the foundations right before I tried to do any other things. I also knew this because I've trained thousands and thousands of women over the years. And I've watched women with grown-up kids, I've watched women with older kids still suffer from these things, and I just wish that they knew I wish they had this available to them, or they had somebody telling them, or they took the time to spend on really rebuilding their core strength, because it could save them a lot of pain and discomfort for further years. And then I get women that come to me and I take them back, and I'd like to say, we've got to do this. I don't want to do that stuff. That's slow, that's boring. I don't want to do stuff. This stuff is the foundations. When you get this stuff right, you work on your transverse abs, and we strengthen from the inside out. You will become stronger than ever, stronger than you've ever been, and you will be pain-free. You won't have things holding you back. You'll be able to do everything and anything that you want to be because you've got these foundations right. We've got to strengthen from the inside out. And probably crunches or anything like that is probably the very worst thing you can do. Lifting big, heavy weights, again, worst thing that you could do. So what's the first thing I recommend for you to do is I recommend for you to have your pelvic floor checked out by a pelvic floor physio. Yes, this is going to cost you money. Yes, it is, but you know what? It is going to save you a lot of time and bother. Your pelvic floor could be too loose, too tight, lots of other things, and it can only be checked by a pelvic floor physio. So that is the first step that I recommend everybody take. Go and get yourself checked out by one of them. You want to know where you're at. I had a mum, her kids were older, but she'd had 4 kids very close together. She says, I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with my pelvic floor, any of those things. I said, please. I said, you've had 4 kids really close together. She'd had some miscarriages in between. I said, please just go and get yourself checked. Then we know where you're at. Then I know that I can safely prescribe certain exercises to you. And she went and got it checked, and she had pelvic floor problems, but she just was so used to living with it, she didn't understand. I've had other mums come to me and, they had been wetting themselves and they just thought that they had to live with that. And it's things that can be fixed by just going and getting it seen at. Again, my pelvic floor was too tight So mine was too tight, it wasn't switching on. So I had to work on relaxing it first. So I had to work on relaxing my pelvic floor first and then learning how to switch, reconnect it all, my pelvic floor and my transverse abs, and switch all that stuff on properly. And we were all at different stages. I had another client come and she had this, really hip pain that was, she had this hip pain. She said to me, don't you always hurt when you walk? And I was like, no. She had this hip pain and she had a prolapse that she didn't know, and she'd been to a gym lifting really heavy weights and thinking it was okay to lift heavy weights all the time. And that's probably the worst thing that you can be doing when you have those things. So we now alter her exercise to suit. She doesn't jump. There's different things she does in the class because I know that she has that condition. It doesn't mean she can't exercise. We just exercise safely in the parameters of where she's at. And so that's my first step to everybody is work out where your pelvic floor is at by going to see a pelvic floor physio. We want to strengthen from your transverse abs. So we want to strengthen from the inside out. Now, strengthening your transverse abs is the most effective way that you can get that leaner stomach, that you can have those, you can feel strong and supported, and you can have that tighter waistline. We need to strengthen from there first. I see you need to strengthen your transverse abs and work on strengthening from your pelvic floor first. So this is what the biggest problem I probably see in lots of mums is that we have these abdominals straight under our chest and they will automatically switch on all the time. And people think, oh yep, my core is on. Well, strengthening from here, no, we've got to switch your core on from your pelvic floor. So you have to switch it on from down here, and you have to learn to get this connection first. And you know how you feel? We have that mummy pouch, and you feel like that we have that mum pouch, and you feel like you're hanging and all of that. It's because we've not learned to connect from here, because you're switching your core on from up here, but not from down here. So to switch your core on, it's got to come on from the pelvic floor first. That is the number one thing, and getting that connection from there first. The transverse abs are something that I hadn't heard about really before pregnancy, or I hadn't really paid much attention to. And now they are crucial. And these are the things that, to get that really strong core, to have that flat stomach, all of those things, you have to strengthen them. Now, can you see them? No. Are they ignored? Yes, because they are your very bottom layer of abdominals. So lots of people want to work on these rectus abdominals because that's what they think that, you can see. Well, we've got to get in deeper than that and work from the transverse abs outwards. And when you get that strong, like I said, everything else falls into place. Now, the transverse abs, they corset around your stomach. So they come all the way around the back and all the way around the front. So they are like a corset. And when we learn to connect all of them and strengthen from this onwards, it zips everything in, all right, and makes everything. They protect your back, they protect everything else. So we're going to do a little exercise first to see if you can feel where your transverse abs are. Okay, so I want you coming down onto the ground. And when we're on the ground, I want you to come onto your knees. Now find your hip bones, and then from your hip bones, I want you to just come in a little bit here. So come in a little bit, and I'm going to ask you to really push down. Sometimes it is beneficial to just show your skin. So come in a little bit here, and I want you to push down, and then I want you to breathe out, make a hissing noise. Now while you're doing this, you might feel a muscle popping out. Okay, so that is your transverse abs. If you struggle to feel it that way, I want you to come down onto the ground, all right, and try it this way. Okay, so pushing down, I've found my hips, coming in from your hips, all right, and pushing down, and I want you to make that hissing noise. And as you're doing this, you're going to feel a muscle popping up. Now that is your transverse abs. So that is that very, very bottom layer that we are trying to target, and that it is just essential to have that strong core, to have that defined waist. It is essential to start working from the transverse abs outwards. So what else I'm going to show you is I'm going to show you how the difference of connecting if we're just connecting the abs from up here compared to connecting your abdominals from down below. Okay, so if we aren't learning to connect from our pelvic floor, and I want you to try this and see if you could notice a difference, how, you know, that people can still find they have a lot of weight around here. Okay, so I'm just going to let my tummy hang out, and I'm going to switch. I'm switching on my abs from here. Okay, so I've still got this tummy hanging out here, but I'm switching these on. Okay, this is what we don't want. Okay, so now I'm going to show you on the side. Okay, I'm going to relax, right, and now I'm going to pull up from my pelvic floor first. I'm going to pull my core on from my pelvic floor. Now, do you see the difference in my stomach then? All right, so we're hanging it out. I'm pulling up from my pelvic floor, pulling it in. See the difference in it there, okay? So the first time, it was just here, and then I still had this hang of a tummy, and then the second time, I've been able to pull up my core and keep it engaged from my pelvic floor, and that's what I want for all of you. If you find that you feel like your tummy's bulging, you know, and that you can't get it on, it's because we haven't learned to connect it from down here. So look at yourself in the mirror, see if you're doing it. If we are just switching on your abs and we're switching on these, see, all this is not on, all this is not working, but we're going to switch on from down here, pull up that pelvic floor, pull that in, and then we've got our abs working from there. Okay, so now you can see how important it is to strengthen the core and to strengthen from the transverse abs from the very bottom layer out. But you're probably starting to think, well, you're saying this, but I don't have any problems with my pelvic floor at the moment, so it's not really an issue for me. The thing to think about is there is a very thin lining and muscles that support you all around the pelvic floor and all that area down there. And as you get older, that lining gets thinner. When you are pregnant, it is put under lots of pressure as the baby grows in your stomach. And, you know, if you've had multiple pregnancies, that would have been put under pressure, and depends on the gaps between pregnancies, for a very long time. As this lining gets thinner as we age, it gets harder for our pelvic floor to work, to hold on for us to go to the toilet. When you are strengthening your pelvic floor and having it work optimally, your internal organs will be more supported. By not strengthening your pelvic floor, it will stop you from being able to hold and control your urine, your feces, and wind. And it is something that you can't imagine now, but if you see anybody elderly around you, ask them, see how difficult it can be. I know from experience from my gran, and it makes me really sad. Doesn't want to go out very often now because she's always scared, because she knows that she can't hold on to go to the toilet. So she feels really trapped and refined to where she is, because she doesn't have the ability to walk fast or to get to a toilet quickly, because she knows that she can't hold on. So it is really debilitating, and it really holds you back, and it's something that you can't see. She doesn't have a broken arm or cancer or any of those things, but she doesn't feel comfortable to leave her room because she can't hold on to go to the toilet. And again, you don't think about it when you're 30, 40, 50, you don't think 60, you don't think about it then, but think about what it's like for somebody in the 80s or 90s, what it's like. And, if you're like me, I want to live as long as possible and have as good a quality life as possible. And strengthening your pelvic floor and your core is a major part of that. As we get older, there is also shifts in our hormones, and that leads to weaker and stiffer muscles around the pelvic floor, connective tissues, and then it makes all of those connective tissues become a lot tighter and more rigid, and it provides less support of us. Another thing that I'm sure I've heard from a lot of people when you're saying, yes, Renae, you're telling us to work on our pelvic floor and strengthen our core and all this, but I do not have the time to do this. I cannot fit it in my schedule. I understand that, and that is exactly why I've set the program up to be done in intervals, short intervals, because that is how I could fit it in. I had to fit it in around, I had a newborn baby, I had to fit it in around my business, and around my son, and fitting in everything else in life that I wanted to do at that time. So I had to do what I could when I could. So that's exactly how the program has an app, and the app sends you little prompts of when to do things. They're deliberately done in smaller intervals, 10, 15 minute things, and they're done regularly throughout the day. You might not be able to get through all of them, but the more that you can do, you can also look back and do them. And that's what I did. I did what I could when I could. And there is lots of research, it's exactly what I did to get my strength back. There's lots of research that shows that when you work out for a short space of time, multiple times through the day, or you do one 1 hour stint, you actually get the same results. So you can fit it in around how your lifestyle is. Another thing that I hear a lot of people say is, I'm just not ready to start. It might not be, I'm just not ready to start, and it's probably just not the right thing for me at the moment. And the thing is, I understand that feeling. It is scary to start something new. It is scary to put yourself out there and try something, because you might try it and you might not stick to it, or it might not, you're feeling it might not work, any of those things. But it's not a matter of how ready you are. It's more a matter of how committed you are to really making the quality of your life better. And how committed are you to leading your best life possible and not letting anything hold you back. And by really working on your core and your strength from the inside out, it's going to give you the best options to lead this best quality life without any back pain, without your pelvic floor or anything like that holding you back. Things that we so take for granted, daily tasks like lifting your children up, being able to run. I had a mum say before she came to me that she could not run down the street with her kids because she was so worried that she was going to wet herself. And now she's active and out being with her children. I had another mum, they laughed and they joked about being on the trampoline because they couldn't do it because they wet themselves. This does not have to be the case. And we take all of this stuff for granted now, but as we get older, everything, if we're not actively working on it, it gets weaker. And I really don't want that for you. I want you to lead this best quality life possible. So, and you may have tried some other or seen some other core programs and thinking, how is your program different to anything else that we've seen? Well, my focus of my program is working from the inside out. We've got to get these inside abdominals, work on them, focus on your breath, getting that connecting the pelvic floor, work on all those things, and then go from there. Or they're outwards. And when you get these fundamentals right first, everything else falls into place. I have seen, bodybuilders and all them throw their backs out and have lots of problems because, yes, they're lifting heavy weights, but they don't focus on these internal things and working their transverse abs. And that is really the key to your success. I had a mum that her children were older. She was in her 50s. Her kids were grown up in their 20s. And she found that by she was walking and she had to continually stop each way along because she always had to go to the toilet. And then there was this fear of, not being able to hold on very long. So the walk would always be interrupted. And she thought, I just want this to stop. So she joined the program and she doesn't have to stop going to the toilet anymore. She was diligent in doing her exercises. She still actually repeats the cycles and she still does all of the core stuff. She was able to do it and, she found in a very short time that she didn't need to stop. She didn't need to stop anymore. She didn't need to stop. She could go for a walk and she wasn't always worried about going to the toilet. She suddenly had this confidence in her body and in her body's ability of the things that it could do because she'd spent the time working on it. And that's what I really, really want for all of you. If you have already come this far in the video, I am really, really proud of you for coming this far and following along with everything. But there's some things I want you to check out let's just see if we can check on our core and see how it is working, and some things that you can do to do at home now to really start working on those transverse abs and your core. Now, as I've said, it's really important to first get, regardless of how old your children are, where you're at, it's really important to check with a pelvic floor physio where you're at. So part of that too is I would be asking them to check your tummy separation. Now, I can show you quickly how to do it yourself here, and it will give you an indicator, but it is always best to go to one of these professionals and just see where you're at. It's really important that a dissecting recti is very common in pregnancies, and if we want to, so your tummy has to separate for your tummy separates for your baby to grow. Okay, so that separates, and then after birth, it's got to come back in. Sometimes, depending on how long ago you had your baby, or how you were, that tummy separation doesn't come in. And that's why you might find your tummy's bulging. You might find that you really struggle with certain exercises. And if we don't do the appropriate exercises to suit it there, you're going to be, there's, like I said, we're pushing and pushing and pushing on that lining, and we're just going to keep making it worse. It's going to be painful, and it's not going to get better. So we really want to first check on your tummy if you have a tummy separation. Now, the thing is, when I first had my kids, I didn't know what my tummy was like beforehand because I never thought about it. I never thought about checking it or any of those things. So I don't know what it felt like before I had children, but I know what it feels like now. I know that I don't have a separation. I know I did have a separation after my second baby, but I was very easily able to bring it back together. Okay, so if you were going to check your tummy separation, I'm going to ask you to lay on your back. Okay, so we're going to lift up our top here. Let's go lay on our back. And I'm going to just roll down my pants here too. So from here, so if you were checking on yourself, this is just to give you an idea, but like as I said, it would be optimal to go and see a women's physio for this. Okay, so I'm going to come up as if I was coming up into the sit-up position. You can put some pillows or something behind you if you find this uncomfortable. So from here, I'm grabbing 2 fingers, and we want them to be like together. Okay, so I'm going to hold my fingers down. It might be more than 2, it might be 3. So coming up from right down here, because this is where the connection starts, I want you to start pushing down, okay? And pushing down. Now when you're pushing down, I want you to feel, what can you feel? Can you, is there any depth? Okay, is there any depth? Are you able to push down? For me, I don't. Some mums, I can push my fingers down, and I can go quite far down. Okay, so anything more than 3 fingers is classed as a dissecting recti. So that's what we need to be really mindful. I've had mums who've been pregnant, and I've been able to train them, and we've been able to maintain their core and maintain their separation so it doesn't get worse as the pregnancy goes along. And that's why it's so important to have this awareness. Okay, so from here, we're going to be pushing down, okay, and we're going to see if you've got any. So I would have, like there's nowhere where my tummy would go because I've done the work. All right, I don't know if I could get closer to show you. Okay, so see that there's no, see, so we're going to come up here. So that's what I said, as I'm pushing my fingers down. Okay, and we're coming all the way up through here. So see, there's no gap. So there's there's about 1 finger or so, but like I said, I never felt my abs before I had children. So, but tends to be where your belly button is, can be where there is the most gap, because that's what's got to stretch the biggest. So that's what we want to kind of be checking for and feeling. Now, any depth. So if you're pushing down and you can come really, really far down, then then, you know, that's something that you would want to really be thinking about. And we want to think about, you know, bridging that gap together and pulling it together. And regardless of what age you are at, how old your kids are, you can still do it. It's really very possible. So that's the first thing that I want you to check is for your tummy separation. All right, the next thing we're going to look at is our glutes. So believe it or not, your glutes are part of your core, and they are really, really important part of your body. They are kind of crucial. They're the largest muscle, and they are a lazy muscle though. So the first opportunity they have to switch off, they do. So I find it really, really common in women, especially after pregnancy and all that their glutes stop working. They get lazy and they stop working. This can contribute to back pain and everything else because other muscles are trying to do the work for your glutes, okay? So it's really, really important, and we want to have everything, all your muscles working together how they should be, okay? So to test your glutes out, you are going to lay flat on your stomach. So I am going to have to move a bit further down now. Really? Okay, so lay flat on your stomach. Okay, so from here, I want you to put one hand on your bum, and I want you to lift your thigh off the ground. So I want you to do about 4 or 5 times. And whilst you're doing this, I want you to think about what muscle is firing on first. So when you're doing this, is it your hamstring? Is it your glute? Is it your quad? Is it your hip flexor? Like, is it the front of your leg, the back of your leg? Is it your calf? Is it your back? What muscle is trying to do the work to lift that leg up, okay? So I want you to think about that, and I would love you to write that down. All right? And then we're going to try on the other side. You're going to do the same thing, and I want you to think about that muscle. What muscle does fire on first? And again, write this down. Okay, so I'm going to come a little bit closer so you can see my glute, all right? And hopefully from here you can see what happens. Okay, so I'm going to put my hand on my bum, remind me to lift that leg up. And as I do, I'm going to come straight up and come down. So can you see when I'm doing this, this is the only thing that's firing. All right, so that glute is engaging, coming back down. So if you are feeling this in any other part of your body, if you are feeling it any part, even if you go, okay, I can feel it a little bit in my glute, but it's still I'm feeling it at the front of my leg, feeling it on my quad, it means your glutes are not firing at all, or they're not firing properly, and it's something that we have to address. This is something that we address a lot of in the Rebuild Your Core program, okay? So if that is something that you've recognized, we want them firing properly, and by not having your glutes working properly, it will, you know, what happens is, let's say your hamstrings are doing the work, so they're going to do the work for your glutes. They're going to skip your glute, pull straight back into your back. Your quads are going to do the same, pull into your hip flexors, pull around here. So we just want your body to function optimally so you can live your best quality life. Check them out, make sure you write it down, and let me know how you go. Okay, so now we want to see how we can work the transverse abs. This is the exercise that I recommend to everybody to do. I did this every day, multiple times a day, when I was really trying to strengthen and work strengthen my core and my pelvic floor. So remembering we need to get that connection first from our pelvic floor. So from here, I want you to lay down, all right? And we are going to line our hips and our pubic bone up. Now we are all different. We are all different as to how our hips are, okay? Because we are. All right, so it's all unique to you. So here, if you see, my hips are higher than my pubic bone, okay? So we don't want that. We want them to be lined up. So you may need to rotate your hips. You might feel more comfortable putting rolling a mat or some cushions underneath you. But the main thing is that these all line up, okay? So hips and your pubic bone all line up, and that doesn't change, okay? If you have a gap in your back
like a gap in your back. That's again fine as long as that gap doesn't move. So remember earlier we felt where our transverse abs were. So we found our hips, we came in a little bit from our hips, so we felt them here. I want you to do the same thing to make sure that they're working. Now, with this exercise, there's 3 different levels that you can be at, depending on where you're at. Where our core is at, because we are all different, all right? So starting off, I'm going to show you the first option, which would be option A, which would be the easiest option, okay? So from here, I want you to lift one leg in the air. We're gonna just feel on here, and we're gonna go heel to heel. Now it's really important to focus on your breath and get that nice connection. So heel to heel, coming out. Now where my fingers are, I can feel my transverse abs popping up and doing the work, okay? So you're going to set a timer, and you would do 30 seconds on each leg, okay? So again, coming to the other side, focusing, so heel, toe, heel, lifting up. Over exaggerate your breath. So I'm breathing out on the downward phase. Using my transverse abs to pull back up as well. So that's the easiest level. So you would do that for as long as you can, and then if you feel like that's getting too easy, then we would look at bumping it up to the next level. What I find happens is people go, Renae, this is doing nothing. Somebody once described this exercise as a sleeping exercise. Well, it's really not, but we've got to focus on getting that connection and spending the time to really get it working. Okay, so so that's the first option, okay? The second option is we're going to start off in this tabletop position. So again, we're going to just remind ourselves this is where we're wanting to work, this is where I want to feel it, and we're going down heel to heel. Slow and steady wins a race, okay? So I want you to be able to do it slow and controlled. Now you would do this you would set a timer and do this for your 30 seconds on the timer. But if you started to feel it pulling your back, then you would drop down to the next level. As soon as anything's pulling in your back or anything else like that, you are no longer working your core, all right? So we'll do this for as long as you can. All right, slow and controlled, making sure we can feel those muscles. And the next option, which would be the harder of the 3 options, is we're going to put our leg out straight. So from here, we're going to straighten your leg, point your toe, bring it in, pull it back in. Straighten the leg, point your toe, bring it back in. I'll move back a bit further, then you can see. Straighten your leg out, point your toe, bring it in, bring it back in. So the same thing, the whole time, we need to keep that hips and pubic bone aligned. So that's how you would challenge yourself more, and you would be working up to that. Okay, so that's the first one. The next one is really getting that, is called a mum crunch. Okay, so we're really working on the connection from here. So what we're going to do, pull that pelvic floor on. Right, pull that pelvic floor on first, and we're going to come up. Now, especially when you just had babies, or if you're feeling, remember, no exercise, we don't want to feel anything in our neck. I don't want you pulling with your neck, anything. So the first option would be just to tummy breathe. And this is exactly what I had to do to get that connection right. I started to learn to breathe from my tummy and not from my chest. So tummy breathing here, we're going to go. See my tummy rising. See my tummy coming back in. I'm going to hold my hands up here. Tummy rising. Pulling it back in. So I'm focusing on pulling from down here. We don't want these abdominals under here switching on. So I've got to pull my pelvic floor on and then hold that in while I'm breathing. Okay, so that's option one. Keep your hands on your tummy so you can make sure that you're feeling it down there and feel that tummy rise, feel that tummy come down. Okay, that's your first one. The next one is we can start to do a little crunch. Okay, so again, you're going to use your breath to help you. Okay, it's coming from here, not here. Down here. All right, so you would do that. Now again, you might be able to do that for a little bit. You might not be, you might notice you might only be able to lift a little bit off the ground. But the more regularly that you do it, you will notice that there will be a big increase in your strength and your ability of what you're able to do. All right, so I'm going to go through a couple rounds. What I would do is I would set your timer up at home and just do it, or you can keep this video and follow it, okay? So from here, we're starting off with heel, toe, heel. So again, just keep your fingers here as a reminder that this is where we want to feel it from. Slow and steady. Now I've just got a timer set for 30 seconds. We're wanting to make sure that that hip doesn't change. Okay, a little crunch. So remember, just using these lower abs, focusing on pulling on my pelvic floor first to give you that flatter stomach, to make sure those muscles are working. Okay, that's one round done. We're going to do 3 today, but you could do 5 rounds, 4 rounds, depending on the time you have. Heel, toe, heel. Keep those fingers there to remind you. So remember, we need that hip and pubic bone to stay in line the whole time. Okay, let's crunch. Okay, got one more round to go. And remember the 3 levels of this heel to heel that I showed you, it is okay to alternate between them. But you know, the best thing is that you have this awareness of where the wrong muscles are starting to click in. Okay, it's never cool to just push through. Okay, last crunch. Again, as soon as it starts pulling in your neck, perfect. All right. So how did you go with that core workout? Did you find that you could start to feel the connection? Did you struggle putting on your pelvic floor? Did you struggle holding it there?
Did you feel like this just feels like I'm not doing nothing? I've been there, we've done it all. I've felt that way as well. But it takes time and working on that connection. It takes a daily practice to really, really get it all connected and working, and muscles working in sync. So hopefully you've been able to fill out the attached sheet and you've learned something about yourself. Please make sure you send the sheet to me. You let me know how you go, because I would really, really love to hear. And if you want to really strengthen, you now know that you're ready to take action and start working on strengthening and rebuilding your core strength, then follow the link down below to be able to join the Rebuild Your Core program. Speak to you all soon.